I was a longtime fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise, playing all the way from the first up until around Unity when I moved cities to go to college and just didn't have time between school and work, but I did tend to buy new releases, even if I wasn't paying as much attention to them as I had when I was younger. I was a big fan of the first, and the Ezio trilogy was a blessing when it came out, holding a special place in my heart. AC3 fell down for me, and I skipped Rogue, but I liked Black Flag and dabbled in the others. Then we come to 2017. I'm a busy guy, but my love for gaming hasn't gone away by any means. Now, I need you to understand. I'm not one for change. I've done quite a lot of unwanted change in my life, but I had a couple of comforts, and one was gaming, Mass Effect being the biggest. So when Andromeda dropped and was one of the most disappointing experiences of my life, I was primed to overreact when one of my other comfort titles in Assassin's Creed dropped a game that was very much in opposition to what I was expecting from the title on the box. I didn't get very far into Origins the first time I played it before selling it back to GameStop, and if I'm honest with you, if I hadn't been committed to getting it through at this time for the project I'm working on, I would have put it down again. On paper, Origins is a better game than any of the others that have come before it. Combat has far more depth, Egypt is massive in comparison to any world that came before it, the story is longer and has many more parts in it, and I just hated it. Not all the time, mind you, but most of it. I have not and will never enjoy being forced to grind in a game. Grinding should never be a core mechanic in a narrative based experience, which is what the title of Assassin's Creed would lead you to believe this game is. I really don't appreciate the direction the story inside the game went, but I probably could have gotten into it if I was just allowed to play the damn thing. But every time I got on a roll, I would get kicked in the teeth by level requirements, unable to progress without dragging myself through hours of boring, repetitive side content I had no interest in doing. There was probably some good missions in there, but man, I just could not bring myself to care when I was doing them entirely to raise my stats so that I could go participate in missions that I did want to be doing. And after hours of grinding mindlessly, I had forgotten what I was doing in the main narrative and struggled to care. I think Bayek was a good character, but honestly, I experienced the story in such a spaced out, piecemeal fashion that I can't really say that I know so. I never really had time to sink my teeth in and get to know the character. I thought I was questing for the sake of questing in Syndicate and Unity, but this took it to a whole new level. I was never allowed to just enjoy the game, it became an occupation. When I unlocked the legendary armors in Italy, mentored assassins in Istanbul, or completed contracts across the Caribbean, I was having a great time because I wanted to be doing all of those things. I wanted that sexy outfit and feeling of accomplishment. I wanted to adorn my jackdaw with gilded sails and adorn myself with gilded pistols. I liked defeating enemies that dropped a legendary weapon I could use for Bayek, but the dual swords are really the only drop I got excited about, and that was a happy accident, not something I was working towards. I often go back to a game to do a review, and I find myself so delighted to learn that it was so much better than I remembered, and find myself loving it more and more as I explore depth I didn't know was there. This is one of the few times that I've gone back to find that I hated a game more than I remembered, and it only got worse as I went deeper and deeper into it. I will not be saving you from any spoilers ahead, so this is your warning here. If you don't want that, hop off. Don't worry, I don't expect this to turn into a rant like it did against Connor's entry, but maybe a more disappointing version of Unity. For what it's worth, I don't think Ubisoft Origins is a bad game. It's certainly not my cup of tea, and not something I'd play on my own time, but I'd recommend it to people who enjoy the genre. What I do think is a bad game, however, is Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Origins. And that's what we're talking about today.
Good, Bayek of Siwa. What are you of now?
A new creed. Ours is finished.
Victory for the Guardians of Siwa! The new darlings of the arena! Who knows how far they can go?
Okay, look, I don't love the gameplay here in Origins, nor do I hate it, assuming you're properly leveled. An issue we can talk about in a minute. But it would be disingenuous at best to say that the combat system here is anything but an improvement from previous titles. I have a gripe about the fact that the focus of an Assassin's Creed game was clearly combat when that's so opposed to the philosophies of the franchise. However, that being said, the combat here absolutely does have a depth not found in the series before this entry. Where before we had a simple counter and attack combat system that focused on finding your flow in combat, here we find something with far more options. To start with, right away, there's just more buttons dedicated to combat. What used to be buttons dedicated to interacting with your environment are now intended to be used to interact with your enemies. We have light attacks, heavy attacks that can be charged to break defenses, a shield that can be used with most weapons, a variety of bows that can be quickly accessed with the left trigger, the ability to block, parry, or dodge, along with quickly switching between 2 ranged and 2 melee weapons, along with various tools such as sleep darts, fire bombs, and smoke bombs. The weapon variety is staggering, and actually will change how you play. Or, if you're like me, allow you to pick a playstyle that works for you. To start off with, you have a light bow for rapid fire, a warrior bow that is stupid, a hunter bow which became my trusted companion firing off powerful headshots while maintaining a solid ammo capacity, and a predator bow for when you randomly want to go first person for some reason. Best used for the stealth damage bonus. There's even more melee options, a traditional sword, usually in the form of a gladius. It's the middle of the road all-purpose but great at nothing option. You have your long heavy weapons like axes or maces. Personally, I never enjoyed these, but perfect for those with slower playstyles. Along with your heavy options is their opposite in spears and scepters, long ranges but faster with an emphasis on chipping away at your enemies from distance. Again, not something I enjoyed using, but I did find spear wielders to be one of the more challenging weapons in the game to overcome. Then we get into what I did like. The sickle sword, which I really enjoyed on horseback or tearing through unshielded enemies while hiding behind mine, last but not least, and certainly my favorite, in the dual swords. With a high speed and short range, these really force you to manage your distance and get your dodge timing down, but really became easily my preferred way to engage with almost any enemy type, often switching them out of necessity when my other weapon was failing me in an engagement. I will admit that even with my preferred melee weapons, I often found myself falling back on my bow in do or die situations. Combat is truly, well, a combat system here in Origins, and it really should be commented on how good it is, when you're properly leveled. Yeah, I gotta talk about it. Here's my beef. In Assassin's Creed, the combat lacked depth, to be sure, and especially in earlier titles could get boring, but 2 things were true. It was more often than not optional, stealth being the primary function of the game after all, and more importantly, you were always in a fair situation. Yes, it's true the series was in need of real challenge, but that should be done in the form of better depth, allowing for more challenging interaction with the enemies, not constantly having to have the right number at the top of your screen. For the first time in the game, we have difficulty levels, which is great, but why is normal, what I assume to be the default experience, so damn annoying if you dare to play a mission just a little bit above your level? For example, here I am, level 34, taking on a level 35 mission, and I'm just getting absolutely ran through by the enemies around me because they're just a level above where the game decided I am. If I was playing on hard or higher difficulty, I would say fine, that's what I signed up for, but it's not. And I know what you're thinking, why not lower it to easy? And that's valid, but I didn't for 2 reasons. One, I try to experience games as most people will. I may bump the slider up past normal in games that I find not challenging enough, but I will never go down to easy. I just don't feel as though that's a fair review. And second, by calling it normal, you're telling me this is how it's supposed to be. And all I can think is that you'd really like to sell me a better weapon from the store or a time saver pack to upgrade what I already have. I had boss fights that were less challenging than normal enemies with a bigger number over their head than mine, and that drives me crazy. And this is where gameplay interferes with the narrative. Every time I would get into the story, I would play 1 too many missions, and get my teeth kicked in, sending me back to level up and try again. Skill issue? Probably. But look, when you take away the ability to stealth through levels because I can't stealth kill enemies because I'm too low level, or even worse, I just have forced combat sections that I have no way of avoiding, you force me to play side content that I don't want to. And as soon as I'm forced to play side stories rather than playing them because I want to, I check out at best and get angry at worst. I actually stopped recording side missions about halfway through because I realized that for the most part, they were only actually 2 different side quests available in the game. Either, hey Medjay, I fucked up and as a result I need you to go get something for me. Or, hey Medjay, someone else fucked up and I need you to go get them for me. Although there's a series of side quests where you kill some tax collectors and I'm all the way on board with that. I will also say I had a hard time separating side quests from main quest footage when organizing my recordings, and I thought that was going to be a compliment to the side content until I realized that no, not really, it was that the main content was for the most part boring and uninspired. I actually did notice that while I remember moments from cutscenes, there was really no mission that I can remember as being, well, cool or interesting. Nothing stood out. I can think of a mission that stands out for me in essentially every game that was good that I've ever played. Whether it's exploring the Geth consciousness in Mass Effect 3, drinking with the priest in Kingdom Come Deliverance, hell, like half the damn missions in that game stand out for me, walking through the Eiffel Tower in the Saboteur, fighting Braco in Alpha Protocol, oh, hell, I'm gonna try to run through AC off the top of my head. King Richard's Camp, the Flying Machine, the Banker Assassination, starting a riot, stealing the Jackdaw, the first Stalker encounter, chasing the balloon, and fleeing the burning building. All off the top of my head. Unique, positive experiences in gameplay, but every one of Bayek's missions, whether simple fetch quests or major assassinations, felt, well, the same. Nothing stands out. Oh no, that's not entirely true. Putting some thought into it, I guess the arena was pretty cool, but I shouldn't have had to stress to find something in the game that I played the most recently. Please, tell me what your favorite mission was inside the story. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe something stands out to me, but please, tell me what you found interesting. Alright, I got off on a tangent. Where was I? I seriously have no idea. So let's talk about how they got rid of the most unique feature Assassin's Creed had in social stealth. It's bad enough that stealth is now just playing Far Cry in third person, but actually somehow worse because sometimes your takedowns just don't work because, imaginary sky numbers, but social stealth defined Assassin's Creed. It was bad enough that it was becoming less and less relevant in the series, but to remove it entirely, I just don't know how you can call it an Assassin's Creed game. Seriously, this is just a generic open-world third-person game that happens to have a hidden blade and a plot that involves an Animus and a piece of Eden. The biggest thing is that they didn't change up their game to make it stand out, they changed it to make it blend in. It seems to be the world we live in now where the best thing seemingly you can do is to make your media look like all those around it, but I miss when Ubisoft created trends rather than being slaves to them. Look, at the end of the day, like I said, this isn't a bad game, per se. The combat system has fallen in line with what many would expect from this genre, the scale of the world is bigger than ever, and while it doesn't feel empty for me, it wasn't in any way spectacular. It probably would have knocked your socks off when it came out, to be fair, but so did Rise Son of Rome, and that game has borderline faded into obscurity. Graphical fidelity's only impressive inside its console cycle, and years later when we look back to the art style and visuals, which, for me, were most of the time just bland. Maybe that's because I live in the desert, but I don't know. There's exceptions for sure, but I never stopped to look around like I did in other titles. The biggest weakness this game has for me is when you remove the AC title from it, is that its gameplay interferes with the narrative and makes me play the game in a way I don't find enjoyable. Exploration should be an option, not an expectation. Make a world worth walking through and trust that I'll do it. Don't force me to spend hours having a terrible time doing the same things over and over and over again. Skyrim is a great game to endlessly explore and level your character in, but it's because it's entirely optional and they made that option fun. Black Flag was the same way. I didn't need golden flintlocks or pistol swords, I just wanted them. So it wasn't a grind, it was a project to be undertaken and enjoyed. The moment the story ended and I was exploring because I wanted to, I found the game fun again. It was breathing some new life into it. And then I happened to play a mission that I was just a little too low level for, but that's for another time. I said that the gameplay got in the way of the narrative. Let's talk about why that isn't really as big of a deal as I make it out to be.
Every morning of my childhood, my father and I spoke the prayer of the Medjay, a promise to those in need. I am a Medjay. I am a feather in the eagle's wing, a living dagger plunged from the sky into the heart of chaos. I am a truth unknown, a scabbard unfilled, a son of the Nile, and a defender of the people. You cannot kill me, for I walk among the dead. Come forth by day, and I will guide you home. My son should have learned this prayer from me.
I hate to break it to you, but this game starts off so damn well and never reaches this peak again. You know what? Screw it. Roll the clip. You should see this.
You are the Medjay from Siwa. I thought Medjay was supposed to protect the Pharaoh. I am Medjay to no Pharaoh. You see this? I can read my own name, Nak! We will find you. We will find you in your sleep! Sleep? I never sleep. I just wait in the shadows and I will kill you all! Everyone who sniffed the air that day in Siwa!
I mean, come on, that is the definition of gangster as hell, as we get dropped into a brutal revenge plot right from the word go. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but the cause of this is that these three Bayek has marked on his arm, along with a few others, are responsible for the death of his son in search of access to this precursor vault under Siwa that Bayek couldn't open if he wanted to. You would think that fighting these three, well, two now I guess, would become the entire runtime of the game, and that would have been an epic adventure. A brutal, dark assassin fueled by the fires of revenge, ravaging Egypt in search of the lives of those who had taken his family from him. We didn't get this, however, which is fine. There's more than one way to tell a revenge plot. It's just Bayek switches so quickly back and forth from, I have no joy in my life, only this, to, hey yo, what's up, man? You want to grab a beer? I know the implication is that he's just putting on a happy face for those around him to conceal his darkness from the world, and I can empathize with that, but I don't know, I just never found myself attached to Bayek or his plight. We didn't get much time with Ezio's family, but at least we got some. We get a few minutes with Bayek's son, but I found him pretty bleh, and he was just kind of bitchy and annoying the entire time we spent with him. This starts a trend of the game giving Bayek reasons to care about things in the game and making that believable, but failing to have me personally invested at any point. I like a character putting on a brave face, but it felt more like one with split personalities that just shoved themselves in the plot's convenience. Like, for example, I'm going to skip way ahead. You'll spend somewhere around the first hour of the game with Bayek's best friend Hepzibah, whose name I totally didn't have to look up. He gets you out of the tomb where you killed the Haron, and then you help him stop some soldiers from burning down his house. He gives you some info on your target here in Siwa, the Ibis, some leads on side quests to help you level before you go after him. Then after you kill the guy, take the Apple of Eden, which of course you have no idea what it is at this point. You'll share a drink and say goodbye before heading off to Alexandria. Then about 30 to 40-ish hours later, you'll return to Siwa at the closing hours of the main quest and find him dead. Of course, this upsets Bayek. It's his oldest friend, but to me, this was just some dude I saw for a few minutes at the beginning of the game, and Bayek's performance isn't strong enough for his grief to become mine. This becomes a trend of the game. He loses people I don't know, and I guess I'm expected to care, but I don't. Small spoilers for both Kingdom Come Deliverance and Alpha Protocol here. I just want to give some examples of things here being done better somewhere else. You don't spend much more time with Henry's parents than you do with Bayek's kid or Hepzibah, but when he loses them, it's so clear that his whole world has changed in this moment, and he spends the entire game openly reeling from this loss. He wasn't a Medjay, he was a child, but he waded through fire just to bury his parents, and it nearly cost him his life. This endears you to the character. You don't need a ton of time with a character to emphasize with a character's grief, it just needs to be well acted. I felt more finally catching up to Runt than I did at any of the assassinations that Bayek took part in. On the flip side is Madison from Alpha Protocol. You'll meet her in Rome and spend a notable chunk of that hub interacting with her before, after, and sometimes during missions. So when regardless of whether or not you pursue a romance with her, you're forced to let her die for the greater good, which is actually a choice you have to make. It's not one that the game makes for you. The way in which she dies, the loss is felt by Mike, and that is mirrored by the player. The murder of his son is the defining point in Bayek's life and the fuel that drives the plot, yet I just simply don't care for the majority of it. Although there was one scene that stood above the rest. We can talk about that later, though. For now, we have a modern day segment that I refuse to even discuss because it's worth exactly nobody's time, and then the first of many title drops before we head to Alexandria. Now, of course, at this point, your level will be too low to play the missions in Alexandria, so be gently encouraged to go quest in the small nearby town, but that's not part of our story. You get to the city, and after a little cloak and dagger, be reunited with Aya, Bayek's wife. I'm conflicted about how I feel in regard to Bayek's relationship with Aya. On one hand, they are an awesome pair, and having this one tethered to a life gives Bayek a reason to be more positive than you would expect. But that being said, I feel as though she is simultaneously a better character than Bayek, and one who only exists as a plot device to rip one more thing from him later in the game. I'll see how my feelings on the subject develop over the course of the essay. Spoiler alert, they didn't change much. She provides you with the hidden blade, 2 new targets, and the info that she has killed 2 of those responsible, leaving only the snake left to be killed as part of the conspiracy, along with Gennadios because he's hunting Aya, which has her stuck in hiding. Killing Gennadios will actually be the triggering factor for sending the Falakis after you, essentially roaming mini-bosses. They're fun, I guess, although often more annoying when you're just trying to get somewhere and a boss fight pulls up. You'll track the snake to the bathhouse and head in with nothing but your hidden blade, although there's a super obvious path for getting in and out without getting detected, so that's no big deal. Bayek cuts off his own finger using the blade. The origins of the missing finger assassins before Ezio were adorned with, like Altair. Personally, I always thought the missing finger was way cooler, but I wish it had been a conscious decision rather than an accident, although this does mirror real life where sometimes cool things have lame backstories. We return to Aya and tell her of our triumph, but something weighs heavy on Bayek. It's almost as if he knows there's no possible way we finished our quest 3 hours into the game. I just have a hard time with this because frankly the 5 who we needed to kill to avenge the loss of our son felt like they were of such little consequence that I couldn't care about them. Hell, we only actually killed one of them after we learned why we were doing it, and only personally killed 2 of the 5. I would have enjoyed tracking down and dismantling 5 well-developed characters over blowing through them and then getting a bunch more targets with reduced meaning to me. I didn't like it when AC2 had a massive list of targets that felt impersonal, and it feels the same here. When the original title had 9 targets that all fed into each other to give you the pieces to understanding a larger conspiracy, that was fantastic, and I feel like that concept could have worked here, but alas. It's at this point Aya sends us to Apollodoros to make sure we really have killed all those responsible, and this is the point Cleopatra will make her introduction.
I will sleep with anyone, as long as they agree to be executed in the morning.
Like Xantivis.
He was well satisfied with his bargain.
It really is hard not to love her. She doesn't have the magnetism that I would expect, but I can appreciate how you never feel entirely sure where you stand with her, only knowing that she will always have her own self-interest at the forefront of her mind. I also love how Bayek is told to kneel when he meets her and promptly ignores this. It's a nice little addition to his character. It's at this point that the real plot is laid out for us. We stumbled into the Order of the Ancients, where Bayek's hidden ones are the origins of the Assassins, the Order is the origins of the Templars, at least in ideology, as I was pretty sure I remember the Templars being formed in the first game during the Crusades, but whatever. We learned that the man we killed, who we believed to be the Snake, was actually the Hippo, and the Snake is actually the whole organization. We learn of new targets, and Bayek isn't happy about it, but he agrees that this is the course of action he must embark on. And I like how clear Cleopatra is, straight up saying that it's time to kill some people. She provides him with a new Medjay badge, and they did not bother to animate him removing the old one because it's so clearly still there when he takes it off, and I find that hilarious. The first target I chose to go after, and likely everyone else's considering he's the lowest leveled, is the Scarab, known for taking dissenters out to the desert and burying them up to the neck in sand to kill them slowly. Your contact will be Tarak, and I'll just spoil it for you, he's the Scarab and will poison Bayek to leave him in the same fate, but that doesn't really work on main characters, so we get the best of him. It's at this point where the game started mixing in missions where Aya is commanding a trireme out in the ocean, having pretty fun naval battles. Then I went to handle the Hyena. She's apparently like being all evil to the people out there, but all she seemed to care about when I got there was using magic to bring her kid back to life. Could have been a really good character, but if we didn't immediately kill her after she spelled out her desperate ploy, but it's a pretty interesting boss fight, I guess. It's just crazy to me that they can make targets so uninteresting. We had a phenomenal plot that was so deeply personal and interesting, and we just dumped it a few hours in to have a padded game full of uninteresting missions. Yeah, we circle back to it being personal at the end, but again, I have to argue that this is a very personal story to Bayek, not me. And he's failed to make me care about his plight. Next up, I went to the city of Memphis to deal with a lizard and apparently a cursed bull. However, we start off by going to seek the advice of the seer, and while we're there, help the pregnant wife of the chief by having a super weird trip and fighting a god. Interesting. With this, we come to the conclusion someone is poisoning people and we should go deal with that. Just a personal gripe, that's true of damn near every game in the series. If you're going to end a cutscene, then have me walk 10 feet just to play another cutscene. Please just make them into one scene. Anyways, we walk out to find Aya waiting for us and travel with her to find out what so-called curse is affecting the bulls that's like a god or something. I don't know, man. Turns out, surprise, surprise, it's not a curse, but some people poisoning the bull, and it's the twin priestesses who are being blackmailed by the lizard who are keeping their brother hostage. I'm sorry, editor's note here. Why do you just have that with you? Like, why? Why? Who just carries around a finger? In a box? Whatever. To force them to his will. So, we go and get him. The brother will give us the info we need to track down the lizard. A priest, of course, which even Bayek mentions is becoming a trend, and we race back to tell Cleopatra. I really enjoyed this little character detail as Aya bows and Bayek couldn't care less, showing that he has only ever cared for his purpose while Aya has gotten wrapped up in other affairs. Also, when they reveal it's the twins who poisoned the bull, Cleopatra with no hesitation orders they should be boiled to death inside a bronze bowl. A reference to the brazen bull, and I think a hint of the Greek influence on Egypt we had heard so much about over the course of the game. Also, when you Google brazen bull, one of the top recommended searches is whether or not it hurts. And I mean, Jesus, what a world we live in. Does being boiled alive hurt, guys? I don't know. I better Google that. Jesus. I do like the assassination as you're just given the info that the priest wears a blue scarf and has a cough, meaning you might have to use, 10% of your brain capacity to find him, which is at least better than the whole 0 we've been at before, so I'm grateful. It took me a whole 11 seconds to figure out which one was him. I also love how Bayek assumed I wanted to kill the random innocent guard behind the lizard, not the lizard. That poor guy caught a tremendous stray on this one. After this victory, we will celebrate for the night, then head out to challenge the crocodile, who resides in Crocodipolis. Which I know is a real city in Egypt, or was, and I mean, it's probably hard to resist the temptation, but come on, guys. Okay, it's a little funny, and I probably would have done the same thing. The crocodile is probably the strongest of the assassination stories in my eyes, outside of the final boss. Maybe the best. Again, with the editor's notes, if you're not gonna have him actually take the badge off, just don't show me the arm that it would be on, that it's still on when he's holding it in his hand. Thank you. The only problem becomes the big moment is that the daughter of our contacts will be killed by the crocodile, and it was extremely predictable. When an innocent character actually says the words, "I can never die" out loud, it's essentially putting on a red shirt, and was actually the first thing I said when I heard her say it.
Thank you, Shadia. You should go back to your mother now. It might get dangerous.
Nothing bad will ever happen to me. Iset can fight, you know. She will protect me.
Oh, that girl's dead. Again, it's a super strong moment from Bayek's perspective, but for me, it was just a character who had essentially no time to grow on me, die in a way I saw coming a mile away. It was clear that the writers wanted an emotional gut punch and didn't know how to write it. The fun part of this investigation is fighting inside the arena, where you actually lie to an old friend to get in on her name. We get in to track down the ones who we believe killed the girl, and we think it's these gladiator brothers, who are definitely my favorite boss fight in the game. Then there's a falling out when your partner finds out your true intentions. She actually seems a little bit hurt about this, and ends up as the crocodile's personal bodyguard, which in any well-written game would lead to an incredibly emotional fight that we would struggle through because of the emotional burden it lays upon us. But this is Assassin's Creed Origins. Her death is given as much love and care as any moment in this game that could have been so great. I do like the post-death scene here for the crocodile, even if I don't think Bayek's voice actor really lives up to the moment.
Shadia!
Murdered by one of you.
Shadia.
Who?
Shadia! She was the child you drowned!
Like all of your kind, you fail to see what greatness lies in store for Egypt.
Is that what you tell yourself? You do not remember those you killed. She was the child of Henut and Hotefres.
Henot was a stubborn rock. That ledger would have meant the end to all our hopes.
You destroyed families.
I did what had to be done.
I will destroy everything you stand for, Berenike! And I will destroy all others like you! But for now, all that matters is that you killed Shadia! And the last word you will remember is her name! Shadia!
Ironically, I forgot Shadia's name until I rewatched that. So I just love this. After the crocodile, we get this letter from Aya that's like, hey, guess what? Turns out none of those dudes we've been killing actually were involved in the killing of our son, but we added 2 new names to the list, and that's it, I swear. Like, for real this time. We return to Cleopatra and work to root out conspirators and assassination plot that's pretty fun, and we kill the guys Venator hired before he himself pulls up to do the job. It should irritate me, but Aya knocking an arrow out of the sky with her knife is just so damn over the top. It's great. I love it. I also really liked the Venator boss fight until he started running around like a 9-year-old jacked up on G Fuel and got stuck in the level geometry. We then sailed to meet Pompey in order to join forces and march on Cleopatra's brother to take back the throne. But that doesn't really go well, and we have to come up with a backup plan. We get in an epic naval battle before getting to Alexandria and carrying Cleo in to see Caesar hidden inside of a rug. For some reason during this section that doesn't really make any sense to me, you'll be playing as Aya. It's fine, and I like Aya, but I feel like popping her into my hands this late in the game and making me carry out missions without the character or weapons I've spent the entire game collecting and working on is pretty dumb, even if you only have a few combat encounters. Cleopatra will align herself with Julius Caesar, and Aya will be sent out to find a way into the tomb of Alexander the Great below Alexandria. Ptolemy isn't super happy about his sister just pulling up and snatching powers, so this will lead to war. Aya takes to the lighthouse to signal the Roman fleet before you return to Bayek riding into battle with Caesar and his troops. You will start out on a chariot, first fighting off mounted soldiers, then a war elephant, before shifting to battle on your feet. The battlefield does have an awesome, almost apocalyptic feel to it.
The line runs 3 stadia. According to our speculatores, Potinus leads the charge.
Keep the soldiers distracted, Caesar. I will handle Potinus. And Victoria!
You'll then fight another war elephant with Pontius at the helm, otherwise known as the Scorpion. It's pretty easy if I'm honest. Funny enough, he actually apologizes for his part in Bayek's tragedy and goes to his death with his head held high. After this, we proceed to Septimus, who, as I understand it, is one of the original Order members there that day Bayek's son died, although he was not the one who forced Bayek's hand. It was, for me, one of the easiest fights in the game, but that actually might be partially because his defense played well into my preferred fighting style of dual blades, with a lot of movement in and out. We beat him but are stopped from killing him in a scene I'll show you in a second, but I just want to share my thoughts on said scene. Once again, I just don't think the actor for Bayek can really pull off the level of emotion they're looking for in this moment. I love the fact that he maintains his disregard for anyone's orders that stand in the way of his revenge, and I like the dialogue. I just don't find myself drawn to it. I want your opinion if this actually works for you and why, because for me, this was just another on the list of unearned moments that failed to live up to their potential. The lack of setup really leaves the payoff feeling flat. 30 hours in and I still don't care about Bayek, and I certainly don't care about his son. This may mean a lot to him, but it means nothing to me. You be the judge. Does this move you?
Did you miss me?
Stop, Bayek! Septimius is Roman. We will deal with him under our laws.
He killed my son!
The Pharaoh is dead!
So after that, Bayek and the rest of them just kind of go, "Well, guys, I think we lost." And so they formed the Brotherhood as an attempt to not lose. When they realized the member of the Order were just a little too interested in Alexander's tomb, they head down to investigate. They walk into the tomb to find Apollodoros fighting for his life, a fight he'll lose, but before he dies, he will pass along the info that Flavius was behind it all. He was the one that killed their son, is now in possession of the apple, or the orb as they know it, and is heading for Siwa. They reach Siwa and fight their way into the open vault only to find... Go ahead, tell me his name. Look me in the eye and tell me you remember his name. Alright, probably last note from the editor here, but I do want to bring something up. I play these games naturally, and I don't look anything up before I've completed my first playthrough, and then I'll go back and try to figure out whatever I missed. One thing I missed is that after each target you kill, you can go back to Siwa and talk to Hepzibah, and this builds the relationship between him and Bayek. This is probably good, and I'd recommend you do this if you play the game yourself, but the fact that I never found it naturally, because why would I ever go back to the level 5 area at the beginning of the game during the rest of the game? I don't know. To me, anything that happened in those conversations shouldn't be expected to be part of your experience, because how would you ever find that naturally? So for me, regardless of the fact that it's there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change my opinion on the fact that this death, it just doesn't hit me. They hold the funeral, and then Bayek heads off in pursuit of Flavius, finally catching up to him in the city of Cyrene. I actually found it surprisingly satisfying to climb my way into the building undetected, and then was, of course, disappointed by the ease of the boss fight. We have always ended these damn stealth-based games with open combat, and we finally have a game where it makes sense since we have foregone stealth in favor of combat as the main way to play, and we cannot get a good boss fight. I don't understand how I can get absolutely destroyed by regular-ass city guard, but the main villain holding a damn apple of Eden is a cakewalk. At the very least, I can say I think this is one of the few times that Bayek sold me on a moment. It wasn't great at the start, but he leaned into the performance and it wasn't terrible.
He was a child, Flavius! My child!
That's the one thing I do not regret in my life.
I will never give you peace!
Your son's death made the Order bow to me! Caesar, even. I had Rome! It gave me an empire of 1,000 sons, each one greater than the last. Come on! Finish me! You coward! The waste of time!
I can't do it! I can't do it!
It's alright, Papa.
No. I will lose you forever.
Not forever. I will be waiting for you in the field of reeds.
I'd also like to point out that I do enjoy seeing the feather Altair is given to Mark assassinations found its origin, pun intended, in this game. It's a nice touch I could have mentioned sooner. I've also just got to mention, you don't have to fight your way out of here after you kill Flavius, you can just fast travel. And while that's super dumb, my lazy side and desperate want not to play this game anymore thanks you. Bayek returns to Aya with the good news, and she responds by telling him that they're breaking up, and then she's leaving for Rome. Bayek responds to this about as well as a guy desperately in love with his wife who just asked him for an open relationship would. And, as a result, I wouldn't invite Bayek to the Oscars anytime soon.
Oh, wow!
Also, apparently the symbol for Assassin's Creed came out from this little bird skull that was on Bayek's outfit, which, I mean, come on, guys, that just sucks. There was no meaning to this thing. Ugh. Also, the last and final mission is actually found here with Aya. It's pretty much entirely unnecessary in terms of the story, but at the same time, I do really enjoy it as it's the best naval battle in the game, which I barely scraped through. I mean, seriously, just look at this.
Hey! Pick up the pace! Ramming speed! Up tempo! Just say the word! Fighting! Now!
Let it rain! Down, you demons, into the sea!
Hey, yo, slackers! Form up with the rest! Today, we sail together!
What port are you taking us to?
There's a town called Antium I'd like to try. Lots of merchants sail in and out of there. Should be safe for you. From there, it's a half-day's ride to Rome.
Isn't that just phenomenal? Unfortunately, the boss fight with Septimus, which is the last boss fight in the game I should add, was so easy I literally never got hit, and as you've seen, I'm really good at getting hit by everyone and everything at all times in this game. Also, I just still don't like the concept of you making me spend the entire game grinding for levels, skills, and better weapons just to plot me into a different character with potentially different weapons than you prefer. I happen to like the dual blades a lot, but I'm pretty sure that was just a happy coincidence because I can't find any evidence her loadout will change based on yours. I can't imagine what this section must have played like if you had spent the entire game with heavy, slow weapons like an axe or something and you had to learn a new playstyle all of a sudden right at the end. That must have sucked. I'll admit, as much as I think it's completely out of place and really shouldn't serve as the final mission for the game, being part of the assassination of Julius Caesar is about the most Assassin's Creed part of this game, and I absolutely adore it. I would have preferred if we actually heard Et tu Brute rather than the translation. Okay, look, I'm not even going to try to sound Italian on that, that was my best. It was still good, though. I liked the scene.
You too, my child.
We then get a little wrap-up cutscene where Aya renounces her name and becomes Amunet, or the Hidden Ones, and we see the beginnings of Bayek growing the Order of the Hidden Ones before we get our big ending title drop marking the end of the game. Finally. Oh man, I don't even know where to start with my thoughts on this narrative. You know, when I wrote my script for Unity, I started off with a confused opinion on the game, but after writing about it and giving it some thought, I found a love for it? This isn't Unity. Actually, looking at the story piece by piece has made me realize how poor it really is, and it's not so much that it's a bad story, it's an average story poorly told. Just to start, the way the game works means that you're getting the story in small pieces hours apart, which just inherently detracts from your ability to interact with the narrative. On top of that, rewatching all these scenes and having it reinforced minute by minute that Bayek's performance was just downright poor the majority of the time really emphasizes for me why I checked out of so many of these scenes when before I didn't really know why. From the point of view of Bayek, this is a truly tragic tale and one that would absolutely destroy a person, but we lack all of the backstory and context in order to really feel his pain. I'm sure if you're a parent, this probably hits a lot harder, but let's be honest, the demographic for Assassin's Creed games is probably, what, 18 to 24? It's just not aimed at parents. So I don't know why they would assume you would immediately empathize with this. I saw someone say that this isn't a narrative-driven game, and I couldn't agree more. The plot is clearly just a device to get you to explore Egypt, and if that's your thing, fine. But it's absolutely not why I boot up an Assassin's Creed game. Black Flag proved that you can have a massive world to explore and enjoy while pairing it with a fantastic narrative and characterization, but this game completely fails at this. In Black Flag, all the exploration was optional. I was out doing stuff because I wanted to. Here, I had to do it, and that detracted from my experience of doing it. Look, how about we look over the DLCs before we get to the rest of the conclusions? I know I've usually had DLC coming out separately from the games, but the 4 DLC previously were really separate from the games they were attached to and deserve their own content. Maybe less so in the case of Dead Kings, but whatever. Anyways, these are really just more of the same, and it doesn't feel right to give them their own videos, so it feels better to add them in here, because it's short. Let's get to it. God, I haven't done a DLC section in a game since, what, Kingdom Come Deliverance, I think? Feels weird, but let's get into it, starting off with the hidden ones. I should state, to give these a fair shake, I took the option to boost Bayek up to level 45 for free because I was absolutely sick of grinding out levels at this point, and frankly, I would have been in an unfair mental state to review these sections fairly had I spent the time to level up naturally. So anyway, we get a letter from the bureau leader in Sinai asking for aid, and we hop on a boat and head over to help. Also, I should mention this takes place about 4 years after the events of the main story, so hidden ones are pretty well established at this point, and Bayek has a cool new outfit that his mom made for him. Just kidding, he's the main character in a Ubisoft game, his parents are dead. The letter you received will also indicate that the bureau leader has become desperate enough to align with the local rebel leader even though she isn't confident this was the right choice, and you'll meet both of them upon your arrival. The plot from this point forward is pretty simple, and I don't see a reason to overcomplicate it. The hidden ones are getting hammered on, and so you work to eliminate enemy leaders to lessen the pressure you're under. None of the targets are particularly memorable, but there is this one mission in which you don't know which of the captains is your target, so you either have to guess or kill them until you get it right. I just kind of assumed it was the guy surrounded by all the men at the top of the tower, and I was right, surprise, surprise. Although I do appreciate the fact that there was logic able to allow me to get to my conclusion. I do think that was good. A real surprise is that he apparently has a thing for putting hands in a box. That's pretty weird, dude. You get back to the bureau to report your success, only to find yourself ambushed moments later as the place is set ablaze and you're taken captive. Romans being Romans, they stick your ass up on a cross, but as a nice little stroke of luck, Aya comes to save you. Also, it's a nice little stroke of luck they didn't, nail your wrists to the post like I would have. After you get the other survivors out, you two will come up with a plan of action. You decide to go after the enemy leader Rufio, but first you have to deal with what's happening right now as Centaurians pour into the village slaughtering everyone. With that dealt with, you swim out and kill the commander, but come back to the damning conclusion of your supposed ally. It turns out that this is his favorite method of recruiting, making martyrs, getting the Romans to come out and kill enough villagers to get people angry enough to join in on his rebellion. Obviously, this won't stand and we have to go and deal with him. He stands by his actions when you confront him, and you'll have to take him on in what could have been a really fun boss fight if this arena was like 10% bigger. I really like the concept, but I was always just barely falling off, which I would agree is a skill issue, but it took me out of an otherwise interesting contest. Also, he has this shield that is a pain in the ass to get around, which he claims to be the strongest in Egypt, but he doesn't drop his shield when you beat him. What the hell is that? That marks the end of the hidden ones. Now, let's speed run the Curse of the Pharaohs. I mentioned earlier that the DLC doesn't add much in the way of new or exciting combat like the ones we've discussed before do, and I really stand by that opinion with this entry. I'm going to be super light on details here, both to save time, because, hey, why not? And also because, frankly, there isn't a ton of plot. There's no reason for me to spoil something that some of you might really genuinely enjoy. Mostly, it's just running around, collecting stuff, and doing boss fights. The short of it is that Bayek gets word of a piece of Eden showing up in the city of Thebes, so he pulls up to see gods just rising out of the sand and causing all kinds of chaos. He runs around trying to figure out where the hell the apple is and will make several journeys in what appears to him to be the afterlife. I'm going to comment later about how most of the worlds in this DLC didn't really shake me up visually. This is the exception. I'm not sure if I clarified that enough. These worlds in the afterlife are gorgeous. Just phenomenal. I kind of enjoyed the first boss fight I had against the dual-bladed Pharaoh, which as a dual-blade user myself is usually who I struggled against the most, and it really forced me out of my comfort zone. That was good. But at some point, once I learned the attack pattern and realized it was just going to be this over and over and over for 10 minutes with little variation, it really did take me out of it. Because just like the other bosses, he had this really annoying quality of just doing too much damage. Even properly leveled, getting hit with their power attacks was a 2-shot kill, and that just meant that I pelted them over and over with arrows and power attacks until they died. I'm sure you could make these fights more interesting, but I was entirely checked out at this point and just wanted to get it done, so I'll throw no shade. I'm not saying that the fights are bad inherently, I'm saying that my solution to the fights was bad, and I don't like that it was there. Eventually, you'll find out who had the apple, kill them, and you're done. I have to assume that if you like this style of game, you like the combat, you like Bayek, you like this whole world, you'll enjoy both of these DLCs because they serve as simply more of the same. While they may add a couple reskin enemies and cool looking environments, some of which I really do think look awesome, in reality, both of these DLCs could have been long side quests and I wouldn't have batted an eye. Let's make a quick jaunt over to the music. So we've changed just about everything that defined Assassin's Creed as Assassin's Creed. This means there was the option to completely redefine the music in the games and make it the best soundtrack we had ever seen. There was a couple of good tracks over the course of the AC series, and some of them, like Black Flag, were perfect for their setting. The main theme for each game was always a strong suit, but nothing ever made its way into my playlist. I've always very much been an advocate for the strength of music that's so perfect it goes unnoticed in the moment. Red Dead Redemption 2 did an excellent job of this in my opinion, but it also balanced that out with memorable tracks and important moments. The music in Origins certainly melted into the background, but there was certainly nothing memorable. If I'm entirely honest, I had to check and make sure I had music on during my playthrough before writing this section. At least in games like Syndicate, I hadn't always noticed the music, but I always remembered it being there. Here, I honestly couldn't tell you what the main theme sounded like or anything else. For what it's worth, I'm going to give the soundtrack a listen through and give it a fair shake. Okay, wow, that was super underwhelming. Let's just move on. Oh, hell. Where do I even start with Origins? I had such an open mind going into this. I really did. I didn't want to dislike this game. I never want to hate any game, and I certainly don't ever want to spend 30 plus hours being miserable, but that's what I got here. Look, I'm going to stand by the fact that if you're into games lacking a strong narrative that focus on just mass amounts of gameplay and exploration, then yeah, this is probably for you. And you know, Skyrim jumps to mind when I write that description, but just about every facet of Skyrim is better than this game. I certainly stand by my opinion that I had going in from my first experience with these new generation of games that sticking a hidden blade on the character does not make this an Assassin's Creed game. Removal of social stealth, freedom of movement, stealth in general being the safest approach, and an overall narrative-focused game. I cannot see what argument you could make to say this game belongs in the same series as all the others that came before it. If you like this better, fine. Absolutely, I get that. But when someone says they love Assassin's Creed and then tells me Origins is their favorite, I struggle to take them seriously. I often talk about how much I love when games get the details right, and this isn't something I can give Origins when it's so often the details that bothered me in this game. Like, just to start, why is the Gladius so damn big in this game? I actually stopped using it because I couldn't take it seriously and it had me laughing through cutscenes. Almost every time I really wanted to like a moment for Bayek, there was just something to take me out of it, and I think that was often down to the mocap actor that they had just could never seem to betray enough emotion through his expressions and or movement. It always just felt so lackadaisical, and I couldn't take it seriously. They created a combat system that was legitimately good and a massive world to explore, then paired them together in the worst way possible. Forcing me to run around doing tons of stuff I have no interest in just to pad the length of a game by ensuring combat is unbearable if I don't is frankly unacceptable. Exploration and questing should always be a matter of enjoyment, not a task to be begrudgingly undertaken. Every time I thought I was going to be allowed to just enjoy the experience, I was ripped out of it, and that's a damn shame. I don't want to sit here and rant on about how much I dislike this game, so I'm going to leave you with this. If you love this game, I am happy for you and wish you the best. But fuck me, I wish this had never gotten plastered with the name of a series I adore. I don't know who at Ubisoft decided one day that being fresh and new meant alienating an entire franchise from an IP they loved. They did it with Rainbow, then they did it with Siege, which they already was the thing that destroyed Rainbow. Then they did it with Ghost Recon, and they continue to do it with Assassin's Creed to this day. This whole project has been about finding out where they went wrong and how Mirage can fix it. Up until Origins, I thought Black Flag was the turning point for this game, losing what made it great. And while I still think there's truth in that, a lot of truth in that, this is an entirely different pile of disappointment. Please, I'm begging you, take what this game is, give it a new name, and release it for the people who love this. And give those of us who love Assassin's Creed the chance to play Assassin's Creed again. Next week or in 2 weeks, depending on how things work out, you'll be getting my conclusion essay where I break down everything we've talked about, give out some awards, and lay out my hopes for what we find in Mirage. I don't know what Mirage is going to be, I just desperately hope it isn't more of this because I think that would be the last time I ever touched a game in the franchise. I know a couple of you are probably wondering when I'll be doing Odyssey and Valhalla, and the simple answer is I won't be covering them. I don't have the time available in my schedule, and frankly, I don't want to play them nor flay them in the form of a video. Tell you the truth, after working on this for so long, all I want to do is enjoy Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty when it comes out, but I'm going to see this through. So, the schedule for you guys, I'm all the way back in August right now, just if this sounds a little weird. After this video comes out, you should be getting the Assassin's Creed breakdown, then you should be getting the Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty review, and then after that, you should see the AC Mirage review. Hope that all works out that way, we'll see. As always, if you have any questions you want answered in the next video, leave them down below. If you just want to tell me I suck, leave it down below. Thank you to anyone who has followed me on this journey and to the end of this video. The comments you guys leave are what keep me going, positive or negative, and I appreciate it. Excited to bring you guys something fresh and new soon, but for now, we can end this here. This is Purple signing off. Have a wonderful night, and always remember to smile. Thanks, guys.
No one knows of our existence. Like Amun, we are the Hidden Ones. From darkness we have come, and in darkness we shall stay. Humans are not meant to last forever, but this creed will. The creed is the only immortal thing in the world.